All right, so yesterday in class we talked about how to complete the square. And remember, when we're looking at completing the square, we're going to look at our b values, and then we need to take half of that because that's how we're going to make a square is half the b value, and then we square it. We also need to remember that if our a value is anything greater than 1, we need to factor that out. So let's start with number 1 in the warm-up. I can see that I have 2x squared plus 10x, and remember I'm going to put in a blank here because that's what I'm going to try and complete, and I'm just going to use the minus 6, move the minus 6 to the right. I can also see that I have my a value is not 1, it's 2, so I'm going to factor out the 2 to be left with 2 divided by 2 is 1x squared, 10 divided by 2 is 5x, and then plus my blank, and then our minus 6 at the end. So now we identify our b value, which is going to be 5. We want to take half of that, so that gives me 2.5. If you want to use a fraction, you can leave it as a fraction. And then we want to square that number. So we take b over 2 and we square it like this. So that would be 25 over 4, or 6.25. Now remember, when we go through, we want to write it this way so that when we get ready to expand, it becomes easier. So as I get ready to put these things back in, I still have 2 times x squared plus 5x, and I like to put the 2.5 squared in here because that'll help us when we get ready to write our final answer, minus 6. But remember, if I put it in here, I also must take it out, and so I take that value where it was squared and I subtract 6.25. Okay. The only thing I have to remember, though, is this 6.25 was also being multiplied by 2, so I need to take that value and also multiply it by 2. Because what I put in was 2 times 2.5 squared, so I need to take what 2.5 squared is, 6.25, and multiply it by 2 as well. Now I can get ready to write my final answer, and when I do that, remember we are going to put it in vertex form. This was a positive 2.5, so x plus 2.5 squared, and then I can just take all of this and put it into my calculator, negative 6 minus 6.25 squared. And I'm sorry, not square, but 6.25 times 2. So when I type in my calculator, negative 6 minus 2 times 6.25, I get negative 18.5. And that is going to be my final answer of how I completed the square for number 1. So if you need to use this to help you for number 2, pause the video and make sure you can work this out. Again, I'm going to put in my blanks. So 5x squared plus 30x plus something that I have to use to complete the square with. And then I just move plus 10 to the right. Now I can see that my a value is not equal to 1, so I need to factor out what my a value is. In this case, it is 5. So 5 divided by 5 is 1, so 1x squared, plus 30 divided by 5 is 6, so 6x, plus my blank, and then leave my 10 to the side. I need to look at my b value, and in this case my b value is 6. So we do 6 divided by 2, which is 3, and 3 squared, which is 9. So as I get ready to plug those values in, 5 times x squared plus 6x plus, and remember I take my b divided by 2 squared value and put it here. And I like to leave it with my b value in there, my b divided by 2, so that when I get ready to expand, it makes my life a little bit easier. And then plus 10. But remember, I've put in 3 squared, so I must take it out. But I also have to remember that I am multiplying by 5 here. So when I take out the 9, which is 3 squared, I have to multiply that 9 by the 5 that I have factored out. Then when I get ready to write my answer, I condense, so it becomes x plus 3 squared, because remember that's my b divided by 2. And then I just need to put into my calculator 10 minus 45, which gives me a negative 35. So that would be how I complete the square for that one. Okay, for number 3, same thing. We're going to leave our blanks in, so 4x squared minus 16x plus something that we're going to use to complete the square. And then we move our plus 10 to the right. We need to factor out our a value because it is not 1. So 4 divided by 4 is 1x squared. Negative 16 divided by 4 is negative 4x. We need to complete that, and then we leave our plus 10 in the problem. So if I look at my new b value, my b value is negative 4. So I do negative 4 divided by 2, which is negative 2. Negative 2 squared gives me positive 4. Now I can plug these values in. So I have 4 times x squared minus 4x. Now remember, it's going to be plus what my b value was squared, so negative 2 squared. And it's important that I use that. I always put the plus, remember, because I'm putting it in so that when I get ready to take it out, I don't forget. So we said negative 2 squared is 4, but we also factored out a 4 here, so we have to do 4 times 4. Okay? Then we can get ready to condense, and life will be happy. Don't forget the 4 that we factored out, x, and instead of plus 2, now it was a negative 2, so I can do minus 2 squared. And then in your calculator, you want to type in 10 minus 16, which gives us a negative 6. As we're getting ready to look at number 4, we start the same process over and over again. Negative 3x squared plus 18x. We've got to complete the square by putting something in, and we move our 10 to the right. I want to factor out my a value, which in this case is a negative 3. So negative 3 divided by negative 3 is 1x squared. 18 divided by negative 3 is negative 6x. We'll complete the square, so we leave a blank, and plus 10. In this case, my b value is negative 6. So negative 6 divided by 2 gives me negative 3. Negative 3 squared is equal to 9. So as I'm getting ready to actually complete the square, negative 3 times x squared minus 6x plus, because remember we're putting it in, that's where I get my negative 3 squared plus 10. And if I put it in, I also have to take it out, so I'm going to subtract. Negative 3 squared is 9, but also remember that we have factored out a negative 3, so 9 times negative 3. Okay. Then we can write our condensed problem. The negative 3 that we factored out, x minus 3, because my b value is negative. Don't forget the squared. And then in your calculator, you would type in 10 plus 27. This is really like a 10 minus negative 27, but remember, keep change, which gives me plus 37. And so all of that is a review of what we did yesterday in class. When you get ready to multiply polynomials, it is up to you on how you choose to do these, whether you want to use the box method, which is where we take the first one, put it down the side, and we take our second, 2x minus 3, and we put it at the top. Then we just multiply through, so 2x times x is 2x squared. X times negative 3 gives me negative 3x. 2x times 4 gives me positive 8x, and 4 times negative 3 gives me negative 12. Remember, I want to combine my like terms, which always happen on the diagonal when we peanut. And it tells me what to do with these. In this case, we need to add. So for my final answer, I get 2x squared plus 5x, because 8 plus negative 3 is 5, and minus 12. If you choose to distribute these problems, it would look like this. 5x times x is 5x squared. 5x times negative 2 is negative 10x. 3 times x is 3x. And 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. Then I want to combine my like terms, which happen here. So my final answer would be 5x squared minus 7x minus 6. And I don't care which method you choose to use when you're doing these, as long as you understand what you're doing. So I will distribute this one. 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times 3 is 9x. Negative 1 times x is negative x. Negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. Remember to combine like terms to get 3x squared plus 8x minus 3. And I'll box the last one just to give us another look. 4x minus 5 over 3x plus 2. So we're going to multiply these two things together. 4x times 3x is 12x squared. Remember, there's two x's there, so it must be squared. 2 times 4x is 8x. Negative 5 times 3x is negative 15x. And negative 5 times 2 is negative 10. Remember to peanut your like terms. And then simplify. So for my final answer here, I will have 12x squared minus 7x minus 10. The last bits of our warm-up there, we were multiplying polynomials. And so now what we're going to do is work on undoing the multiplying. So we're going to factor these polynomials. I'm going to give you an answer and ask you for the two factors that made up that answer. So let's start by looking at a polynomial of 2x squared plus 7x plus 3. And they're going to tell me that one of my factors is actually x plus 3. So what our goal is here is to work backwards from what we just did using our box method. So if I know that one of my factors is x plus 3, I'm going to go ahead and plug that in. I also know that my a value is 2x squared, and I know that my c value is 3. Now I have to be careful. My b value is going to be equal to 7x, but remember these two values here in the middle for our peanut, they have to be added together to equal 7x. Well, we can work this like a puzzle and come backwards. So if I know that x times something must equal 2x squared, we have to think, x times what would equal 2x squared? Well, I know it's going to be 2x. Well, at this point, I can now go back in and plug in the values that I don't know. 2x times 3 will give me 6x. Okay. Now, when I get ready to multiply the other part and fill in here, 3 times what equals 3? Well, in this case, I have a very easy answer because there's only one thing that I can multiply 3 by to get 3. And so I know that 1 times 3 is 3, and 1 times x gives me x. And then I can go back and check to make sure this is right. 6x plus 1x does indeed equal 7x. So if they've told me that this was one of my factors, x plus 3, now that I know that my other factor that I need to multiply by is 2x plus 1. When I see this next problem, we can continue to work backwards. They told me that my a value is 5x squared, my c value is 3, and again my b is going to equal 8x, but I have to add two things to get that b value. They've given me that one of my factors is x plus 3. X plus 1. So I'm going to put those on the side there. And then we can fill in the holes by working backwards. Remembering our peanut here. Well, x times what is going to equal 5x squared? Hopefully we know that that is 5x. 5x times 1 is going to give me 5x. Now, because I know that my b value has to add up to be 8, that this inside value must also be 3x. And we can go back and check. I need to make sure that my c value is equal to 3. So 1 times something is going to equal 3. 1 times 3 is 3. Check all our values. They are correct. So one of my factors is x plus 1. The other factor is going to be 5x plus 3. Now, as I look at this next one, it's not quite as easy to do because I've not been given one of the factors. Now, we could probably easily work through this and figure it out, but instead of using this box here, we're going to use something called the bottoms up method. So what I want you to do is write bottoms up, and we're going to give you a formula. At the top of my big X here, I'm going to have A times C. At the bottom of my X, I'm going to have my B value. Remember, we talked about every single time we work through these, we need to list A equals, B equals, and C equals. That's not going to change. So my A value is 3, my B value is negative 14, and my C value is 5. That's going to help me when I get ready to fill in this bottoms up. Now, on the sides of my X, I'm going to have a factor, which means something that's going to multiply, and a factor. And I need to divide those two factors by A. So let's plug this in and see what we got. My A value is 3, my C value is 5, and my B value is negative 14. Now you might be asking, what are we supposed to do with these? Let's go back over to our formula real quick. This is a puzzle. I want to find two numbers that are going to multiply together. So these two factors need to multiply to give me A times C. And these same two factors need to add up to give me my B value. So as I'm plugging this in, 3 times 5 is 15. And, excuse me, I'm sorry, negative 15, because this is a negative 5. Make sure I'm paying attention. And I've got to find two numbers that will multiply together that will give me negative 15, but when I add those same two numbers, they give me negative 14. So the first thing I suggest that we do is make a factor list. And always start with 1 in the number. So we have 1 in 15, 2 won't go into 15, 3 and 5, 4 won't, and then we're back at 5. So here are my options. Now I know because my A value is negative, one of these two things need to be negative. So I can check these opposites as well. Out of this list, I need to add these two numbers together and see which ones actually equal negative 14. So when I add negative 1 and 15, I get positive 14. That can't be it. When I add negative 3 and 5, I get 2. That's not it. When I add 1 and negative 15, it equals negative 14. So these are my two factors. It does not matter which side I put each of these factors on. It is completely up to you. So 1 and negative 15. And we're almost to the point of being done, but we need to remember something at this point called the swing method. So think about when you're sitting in a swing on the playground, your feet dangle down. Which direction do you normally push first? And you typically put your feet on the ground and you push backwards. So in a swing method, what's going to happen is my denominator is going to push back and become the coefficient with the x. So the denominator becomes coefficient of the x, the number in front of the x. So for this first one, this would make it 3x. My numerator is going to swing forward and become my constant. So because it was positive 1, the numerator comes forward to be positive 1. And there is one of my factors. The only thing I have to remember when I get to this next side is if it can be reduced, I need to reduce. So will 3 go into negative 15? Yes, it will. That gives me negative 5 over 1. Then I can look at my swing method. 1 becomes my denominator and swings back. to be 1x, and negative 5 is my numerator that swings forward to become the constant. So to find the two factors of 3x squared minus 14x minus 5, those two factors are going to be 3x plus 1 and x minus 5. So let's look at another example. Number 4. If we want to factor the trinomial, again, we always want to start with our a, b, and c. So a is going to equal 6, b will equal 7, and c will equal 2. So we're going to put it in our bottoms-up formula, a times c at the top. So 6 times 2, b value at the bottom, which is 7. Remember, we're going to find two factors, but those two factors need to be divided by my a value, which is 6. So 6 times 2 is 12. We're looking for two numbers that are going to add up to be 7, and when I multiply those two numbers, they're going to equal 12. So let's make a factor list. 1 and 12. Now, these are positive, so just remember that I can use positive or negative. So positive times a positive is a positive, and a negative times a negative is also a positive. If I look, though, when I add up to equal 7, I know that I want my two numbers to be positive. So 2 and 6, 3 and 4. 5 won't go. If I use a 6, I'm repeating back. So now I just want to add these two values and see which one equals 7. 1 times 12 is 13, so it can't be that. 2 plus 6 is 8, so it can't be that. 3 plus 4 is 7, so those are the two values that I want to use. Oops, 3 and 4. Now, when I get ready to use my swing method that we just talked about, remember that we have to reduce when possible. So is there a number that will go both into 4 and 6? That answer is yes. 2 will go into 4 2 times, 2 will go into 6 3 times. And then when I'm looking at 3/6, I need to see if I can reduce. That answer is yes, so 1/2. I use my swing method. My denominator swings back to go be the coefficient of my x, so 3x, and my numerator swings forward to be the constant, plus 2. So one of my factors is 3x plus 2. For the next one, 2 swings back, 2x, 1 swings forward, plus 1. So my two factors are 3x plus 2 and 2x plus 1. Okay. As we go through and do more practice, I want you to pause the video and do these next 6 that you see on your screen, and then start the video. If you get stuck, you can always start the video and watch, but also check your answers. All right, so my a value here is 10, my b value is 17, my c value is 3. So when I get ready to put it in the bottoms up, 10 times 3 goes on the top, 17 goes on the bottom. Each factor needs to be divided by 10. So 10 times 3 is 30. So as we go through these, we just want to make a list of my factors. If you already know these in your head, there's no reason for you to make a list, but if you're having trouble, this always helps. 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 4 won't go, it's 5 and 6, and then we're repeating. So as I look at my list, I ask myself which values are going to add up to be 17, and that is 2 and 15. Again, it doesn't matter which side you put them on. We want to reduce where we can. So there is a number that will go into 2 and 10. That's 2. 2 will go into 2 one time. 2 will go into 10 5 times. And then we look at 15 over 10. 5 will go in each of those to become 3/2. So we use our swing method. 5 swings back to become the coefficient of my variable of x, so 5x. The positive 1 swings forward to become my constant. Then I use 3/2. 2 swings back to become the coefficient of my variable, so 2x, and 3 swings forward to be a positive 3. For number 7, my a value is 4, my b value is negative 7, and my c value is 3. So 4 times 3 is at the top with a negative 7 at the bottom. Each factor needs to be divided by 4. So 4 times 3 is 12. Notice that this bottom number now is negative, which tells me when I add them up, everything needs to be negative. So I'm going to get a negative times a negative, which will equal a positive. So I'm going to use negative 1 and negative 12, negative 2 and negative 6, negative 3 and negative 4. 5 won't go, and once I get to 6, I'm back to my values. So I'm looking for the numbers that will add up to be negative 7. That's going to be negative 3 and negative 4. Again, it doesn't matter the order that you put them in. There's no value that can reduce negative 3/4, but negative 4 over 4 turns into negative 1 over 1. Using my swing method, 4 goes with the constant, with my coefficient of my variable, so 4x, and negative 3 swings forward to be my constant. 1 swings back to become the coefficient of the variable x, while negative 1 swings forward. And there's always a way you can go back and check. You can distribute these things, and the goal when you distribute is to equal the original problem. A value for number 8 is 9, B value is negative 9, and C value is negative 10. So when I put it into the bottoms up, 9 times negative 10 will be at the top with a negative 9 at the bottom. Remember, each factor needs to be divided by my A value. So negative 9 times 10 is negative 90. I'm looking for values that will multiply together to give me negative 90 and add up to give me negative 9. Now remember, because my top is negative, that means each of my factors also must be negative. So we've got 1 and 90, 2 and 45, 3 and 30. 4 will not go into 90 evenly, 5 will. So 5 and 18. 6 will go into 90, so it'll be 6 and 15. 7 will not, 8 will not, 9 and 10. 11 will not, 12 will not, 13 will not, 14 will not, and then we're back to 15. So because these numbers are negative, I know that I'm going to subtract. So if I subtract these, this is going to give me an 89, this is going to give me a 43, a 27, 13, 9, and 1. So I can easily see these are going to be my values, and if I want this to be a negative 9, that means that the 15 must be negative. Same signs add and keep, different signs subtract. Keep the sign of the larger number, then you'll be exact. So at this point, what we need to do is reduce if possible. A 3 will go both into 6 and 9, so 3 will go into 6 2 times, 3 will go into 9 3 times. So this is the value I'm going to use to create my factor. For 9 and 15, again, 3 will go into each of these. 3 will go into negative 15 5 times. 3 will go into 9 3 times. So 3 swings back to be the coefficient of my variable, 3x, while the 2 comes forward to be the constant. 3 swings back to be the coefficient of my variable, 3x, while negative 5 swings forward. So my two factors are 3x plus 2 and 3x minus 5. My A value for number 9 is 8. My B value is negative 10, while my C value is 3. I'm going to put those into my big X, my bottoms up. So 8 times 3, it's a positive 3, with a negative 10 on the bottom. Each of my factors are going to be divided by my A value, in this case, 8. So 8 times 3 is 24. Because I notice the bottom here is negative, I know both my signs need to be negative. So I get negative 1 and negative 24, negative 2 and negative 12, negative 3 and negative 8, negative 4 and negative 6. 5 won't go, and then when I get to 6, we're repeating. So I see here that I have negative 4 and negative 6 as my two factors. And then I'm going to reduce these where possible. So negative 1/2, because a 4 will go both into 4 and 8. And on this side, 2 is the only value that'll go into both of negative 6 and 8. So that gives me negative 3 over 4. So swing method, 2 swings back to be the coefficient of the variable, 2x. minus 1. 4 swings back to be the coefficient of the variable, 4x minus 3. Those are my two factors. Finally, for these last two, again, list your a, b's, and c's. A equals 12, b equals 5, c equals negative 2. Put that into our big bottoms up. 12 times negative 2 on the top, 5 on the bottom. Remember, each factor needs to be divided by my a value, which is 12. So 12 times negative 2 gives me negative 24. When my top number is negative, my bottom number is positive. Anytime my top number is negative, I've got a positive and a negative, which means as I'm making my factor list over here, I'm going to subtract these two values. So 1 will go into 24, 2 will go into 24 12 times, 3 will go into 24 8 times, 4 will go into 24 6 times, 5 will not, and then we're back to 6. So if I'm subtracting these two numbers, because remember I have a positive and a negative, that gives me 23, 10, 5, and 2. I can see that I want to use 3 and 8 to give me 5. Because my b value is a positive 5, that means that the 3 must be negative and the 8 must be positive. Then I just need to reduce if possible. So a 3 will go into negative 3 and 12 to give me negative 1/4. A 4 will go into 8 and 12 to give me 2/3. 4 swings back to be the coefficient of the variable, to be 4x. Negative 1 swings forward to be the constant. 3 swings back to be the coefficient of the variable, while 2 swings forward to be the constant. And finally, we want to list our a, b, and c's. So a is 15, b is 14, c is negative 8. 15 times negative 8 becomes our top. Positive 14 becomes the bottom, with each factor being divided by 15. So when we get ready to plug this in, 15 times negative 8 is going to give us negative 120. And you can just put that into your calculator. Because we have different signs here, remember that we need to subtract these things. So 1 and 120, 2 and 60, 3 and 40, 4 and 30, 5 and 24, 6 and 20, 7 won't go, 8 will, so 8 will be 1 and 15, and I could keep going all the whole way. Hopefully you've already seen when you subtract here that you're going to get 6 and 20. That's going to equal 14. Because 14 needs to be positive, that means my 6 has to be negative, and the 20 must be positive. So when I get ready to reduce these, 3 will go into both 6 and 15 to give me negative 2/5. And 5 will go both into 20 and 15 to give me 4/3. Swing back, 5 becomes the coefficient of the variable, negative 2 becomes the constant, and 3 becomes the coefficient of the variable, and 4 becomes the constant. And this is how we find the factors using the bottoms-up method.